Hi everyone, in this video I will teach you how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide complex numbers. Let me just show you first the family tree of numbers. So as you can see, all the numbers are classified as complex numbers, all of them. We can express them as a form of a plus bi, where a is the real part and bi is the imaginary part. We all know the real number system, and of course we also have the imaginary numbers. I also have a video about imaginary numbers in my YouTube channel, so please check that out. Okay, so let's go now to the definition of complex numbers. So complex numbers are basically written in the form of a plus bi. I mentioned this earlier, where a is the real part and a is the imaginary part. So you might be thinking, okay, so if it's imaginary, that means there's no real life application of that. No, the word imaginary is just a term. So mathematicians before just use that term for the square root of any negative number, but there is a real life application of imaginary numbers. Okay, now let's go to adding complex numbers. When we add complex numbers, we just add the real parts and add the imaginary parts together. So we are treating I here as a variable. So let's say we have negative 5 plus 7i, that's the first complex number, and then plus 8 minus 11i. So we add the real parts, the negative 3 plus 8, I think that's positive 5, right? And then 7i plus negative 11i is negative 4i. So the result is, oh, sorry, 5 minus 4i. Okay, so that is adding complex numbers. Let's go to the subtracting complex numbers. So when we subtract complex number, we need to distribute first the subtraction sign and then add the like parts. Okay, so like in this case, we have 5 plus 10i and then minus 15 minus 2i. So the rule tells us that we need to distribute this I to both 15 and negative 2i. So when we do that, automatically we just need to remove the parentheses. This real number or complex number on the left side, we will not do anything to that. So we just keep it and just remove the uh, parentheses. So this is what will be the setup of the next problem. So 5 plus b 5 plus 10i, just remove the parentheses. The 15 becomes negative 15. That negative 2i becomes positive 2i. So negative times 15 is negative 15. Negative times negative 2i becomes positive 2i. And here we just need to add the real parts and add the imaginary parts. So the real parts are 5 and negative 15. That is equal to, that is right, it's negative 10. And then we add 10i and 2i. 10i plus 2i is equal to 12i. That is right. So the answer will be negative 10 plus 12i. So that's how we subtract complex numbers. Okay. Now let's go to the multiplication of complex numbers. So in multiplication of complex number, we are using the fold method here, just like what we're using in multiplying binomials. So let's multiply the first term. F means first term, so 2 times negative 1, that will give us negative 2, right? And then O, which stands for the outer terms, that's 2 times 5i, and that will give us plus 10i. Okay, and then we will multiply the inner parts, or the inner terms rather, negative 4i and negative 1, that's positive 4i. That's right. And then L stands for the last terms. That's negative 5, that's negative 4i times um, positive 5i. So this is equal to negative 20i squared. Okay, so that negative 2 is because of negative 2 times negative 1. That positive 10i is because of 2 times 5i. And that positive 4i is because of negative 4i times negative 1. And that 5i is and that negative 20i squared is because of negative 4i times 5i. Next, we need to combine the two terms here in the middle. So that's negative 2 plus 14i. and then we need to simplify this. Now, we need to remember that I squared is equal to -1. Okay? So which means that this is -20 times -1. Okay? So equals -2 plus 14i plus 20. So why is that -20 becomes +20? Well, -20 times -1 is +20. So now we can add -2 and +20, and that will give us 18 plus 14i. So that's the result. That's the answer. Okay? So that's how we multiply complex numbers. Let's go now to the division of complex numbers. So to divide complex numbers, we will multiply, so we will do multiplication again, the numerator and the denominator by the complex conjugate of the complex number in the denominator of the fraction. So the key word here is the complex conjugate, keywords. Okay, that's the phrase we need to understand. So when we say complex conjugate, it's just the opposite sign of the imaginary part of the denominator. So meaning the real part stays the same, and then we do the opposite sign of the imaginary part, which means that the complex conjugate of 2 minus 5i is 2 plus 5i. Okay? So as you can see, the only difference between the two complex numbers is the sign. Okay? So the original complex number is -5i. The complex conjugate of that is plus 5i. Okay? It says that we will multiply both the numerator and the denominator by that complex conjugate. So definitely in the numerator, we will use the FOIL method. 2 times 4 rather, is equal to 8. 4 times 5i is equal to plus 20i. And then the inner terms, 3i times 2 is plus 6i. And then the last terms, 3 times 5 is 15i squared. Divided by, now in the denominator, we can use FOIL method, but there's a shortcut here. We just need to multiply the first terms and the last terms. So this will give us 4 minus 25i squared. Okay. Now, again, let me just remind you that I squared is equal to -1. So which means this is equal to 8 plus 26i, okay, plus 15 times -1 over 4 times 25 times -1. So what we did here is we combined 20i and 6i, and that becomes 26i, and we substitute -1 to I squared because I squared is equal to -1. That's what we did here. And of course, that 15i becomes -15i, right? So 8 plus 26i minus 15i. No, 15 minus 15, sorry. Over 4, okay, plus 25. So our final answer is we can combine 8 and -15. That's, I think, -7 plus 26i all over 29. And that's the final answer. So that's how we add, subtract, multiply, and divide complex numbers. So I hope you understand and learn this lesson. See you in my next video.